Welcome to Inspiring Possible. I'm Christy Pennison, former stuck person turned therapist and dream consultant. Are you feeling stuck, overwhelmed, uncertain, or just need a little inspiration? Then I want to help you gain the clarity, confidence, and courage to create possibilities and live a life you love. Because folks, life's too short to be miserable. I'm so glad that you joined us today and that you decided to take a listen to this conversation, because I really think it's going to add some value and hopefully just maybe some thoughts or a different perspective that you can walk away after listening to this conversation today. And I don't know about you, but there are times, actually, even something that happened earlier today, where we can have a negative voice that creeps inside of our head that makes us start to worry about things, or maybe it keeps us from taking steps into a idea or dream or goal that we have. In fact, even earlier today, I started second guessing myself about something I said. And then I was like, no, that's so silly, but maybe it is. And so anyways, literally was having this dialogue in my head today. But I guess what? I have a guest that's going to help maybe even me and you today. That's just going to talk about some of the ways to maybe challenge some of those voices that you have that may be holding you back. So I want to welcome to the show, Alicia Berberich. Welcome, Alicia.
Welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Well, tell me, Alicia, kind of like what made you really just become passionate about helping people try to challenge this negative voice and also create goals for their life that may be a lot larger than what they first maybe would set for themselves?
Well, I got into this because I spent years limiting my potential and not doing the things I really wanted to do because of this negative voice in my head. It was just like putting the brakes on my life, and it was making me crazy. I first noticed it in high school when it was eighth grade. I really wanted to take French. And it was my mother who actually said, no, you're not good at languages. Don't take French, take Latin, because you don't have to speak Latin and you'll be better at that. But I always wanted to speak French. So I didn't do it because I listened to my mother. And then I had this negative voice in my head that grew from that, oh, I'm not good enough. I can't do that. And when I was a senior in high school, I wanted to take AP English. And again, I had that voice in my head that said, you're not good enough. You're not one of the smart girls. You need to hold yourself back and not do that. And I kept finding it over and over again that it was creating boundaries about my potential and my opportunities. And finally, I got to the point where I just said, no, I'm going to do it anyway. Maybe I'm not one of the smart girls, but I can still work hard and succeed and do well. So I was able to overcome that. And then I started to talk to other people about it and to help them with the same thing. So being able to really identify the negative voice in your head and realize you can push back on it, was a big life lesson for me.
Yeah, and I think this is something that, I don't know about you, but I think for me, no matter how far I get on this journey, right, it's still something that will creep up at these really unopportune times, I guess you could say, or maybe it's like these times where I really don't need the negative voice to say, no, you shouldn't do that. Are you sure? You know what I mean? It's like, no, I really wanted to do this thing. And then now it's creeping up into my head and trying to keep me from doing this thing that I felt so strongly about doing. But then I started second guessing if it was something that I should really be doing. And I know for a long time for me, I limited myself because I thought to myself, nobody's going to really want to hear what I have to say. Why would they listen to me versus somebody else? Or if there was something I wanted to do, I'm like, why would that be something that I could do? Could I do that? I don't know. So what are some things that's kind of helped you move through that negative voice or kind of challenge it along your journey?
Well, you brought up so many good points. I want to cover one thing first. Sometimes people have this negative voice in their head that's really talking to them. And sometimes they get confused because it's their intuition that's talking to them. And how do you tell the difference between this negative voice, this inner critic on one side, and your intuition on the other side? And I want to say that it really is possible, because the negative voice in your head is exactly just that, a negative voice. It sees things very black and white. It's very dogmatic in its approach. And when it's your intuition talking to you, your intuition comes to you out of curiosity and says, maybe you should think about this, or maybe you can try that. And it has more color and more life. And it's not black and white. It's asking questions and sort of encouraging you to move forward in what you're doing. So I wanted to just separate the two of those because a lot of people wonder about that. And I made a huge mistake. I was recently visiting a girlfriend in New York, and I was standing waiting for my Uber, and my little intuition said, maybe you want to just step over there to the right, which I'm like, it's raining. I don't really want to do that. Well, next thing you know, there's like a huge accident, and this huge rock like comes and hits me in the head. And it was like really a major thing, but it was like my intuition knew that something was going on and I needed to move, but being stubborn, I like didn't want to move. So then once again, I had a note in my head to say, listen to your intuition. Your intuition, it's like the little angel sitting on your shoulder, whispering into your ear, like, maybe you just want to take one step over. Anyway, but when it comes to the negative voice in their head, the way I work with my clients with this, it's a 5-step process. And the first step, which is really the biggest step, is to be aware of the voice in your head. And it's not you talking to you. It's like this little part of you, like it comes into being like when you're young, when between like the ages of 0 and 5, you don't have this filter system. So anything just comes into your brain, comes in because of the way the wavelength that your brain pattern is working on. Sorry. And so you have to become aware of that voice. And then once you're aware of the voice, then you need to acknowledge the voice to say, this is something different. It's not part of me. It's just this voice in my head. And I have a lot of clients that are really, they're kind of fun with this because they decide to name the voice. And it's like, oh, it's Charlie talking to me or whatever. I have like this little troll that talks to me. So you can acknowledge it and then appreciate the voice, because the voice is really just trying to keep you safe within a very limited confine. So if you can appreciate it and say, I appreciate what you're trying to do. I understand what you're trying to do. And then add love to that voice and say, I really appreciate it, but I've got this and I can do this and we can step forward, and why don't we just try this and see what happens? So you give it some loving kindness and encouragement to move forward, because some people say, just cut it off and just ignore it, just push it out. And it's like, that's not going to work, because it's there trying to keep you safe, doing the best it can. But it's like a 5-year-old trying to be the keeper of the knowledge. And now you're like an adult and can make different decisions. And then once you send it the loving kindness, then really take action and move forward with courage. So that it learns that you can do this and it's okay. A lot of it's about your comfort zone, and it tries to keep you within this limited comfort zone. And the more you push the boundary of your comfort zone out bit by bit, then its own comfort zone becomes more comfortable. So it's learning to push the boundaries out a bit.
Yeah, as you're talking about this, I am thinking about a 5-year-old, right? Or even younger in my mind, and thinking of the voice kind of like that. Because the truth is, if a 5-year-old is demanding your attention, is trying to tell you something, you just saying, you avoiding it or trying to silence the 5-year-old, it's not very effective.
Exactly.
The 5-year-old typically is going to get louder. They're going to get more, typically relentless. More vocal. Yeah, relentless. I love that word. They're going to get more relentless, and they're not going to be working with you to achieve whatever thing you're trying to get this 5-year-old to do. I can think about when my child was 5, if I just wanted her to like help me pick up her room, right? The more that if she protested, the more I just said, I'm going to ignore you and we're still going to do this. It just never ended well. But I love this scenario or the thought process of treating the voice with loving kindness and just kind of almost like ushering it along to say, like, listen, I hear your, refusal to do this thing. I know you don't really want to do this, but here's why it's important for us to try to do this. Here's why it's important for us to pick up this room. Here's the things that I think we could do together. And even if the child in that 5-year-old is still refusing, there's more of a opportunity for you to move through it than just being able to ignore it or not listening to it, which is going to make it louder. And as you're talking about this, I'm just imagining this 5-year-old in my mind and us trying to move through this maybe challenging perspective that they might have because it's limited, right? They're thinking, no, don't do that. We're trying to keep safe, or we don't want to do that. It's not going to be comfortable. I'm not going to like doing that, But how do you treat it with loving kindness to actually help it get you through?
One thing that's really important is like with this negative voice in your head, being logical isn't going to work. Like you try to use logic with a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old, and it just gets you nowhere because they want what they want and that's it. So the one way around it is to try to come at it in a way that's going to be enticing for them. So it's like, oh, we really need to clean your room. And you can say, I heard Cinderella can clean her room in 5 minutes. What can you do in 5 minutes? Are you as good as Cinderella or whatever, Superman, whatever thing that you want to come with, but coming up with it with a way that's appealing for them.
I love how you highlighted there's a difference between intuition and a negative voice and sharing your story, because I didn't ever maybe think about it in that way to separate the two, but there is a difference. There's a difference between your gut kind of giving you some perspective or giving you some nudging, gentle nudging, kind of like your intuition was telling you, maybe you should move over here. And then there's a difference between that and then pretty much, the negative voice that's coming at you to say, you shouldn't do that. There's a whole different things of the negativity versus like an ushering of an intuition. And I wonder, how do you help people tap into their intuition more? Because I find that it's harder sometimes because we've let the voice get so loud to actually learn how to listen to what actually your intuition is saying over that negative, maybe voice.
And that is such a good question. And thank you so much for asking, because people are not listening to their intuition because their face is in their telephone and they're scrolling and doing all the things. And in order to tap into your intuition and to connect with that and really develop that aspect, because some people think, well, only some people are intuitive. I'm not intuitive. I'm not like that. But it's a quality of listening and tuning into it and paying attention to it. So if you really want to develop your intuition, just focus on developing your intuition and thinking about things and just taking time to be quiet and letting your intuition flourish within you and come out. But if you're going and overwhelmed with life and have so much stuff going on, like clutter everywhere in your life, how can you tune into your intuition? You need the space for it to come out.
I don't know about you, but I know for me, I have to really try to be intentional about creating this space because it doesn't just happen miraculously, and it's still a challenge for me. What would you say to somebody who's like, that sounds really great about having this space and all? How would you encourage them to find the time, or what would you encourage them to maybe prioritize differently so they could allow for this space to tune in to themselves, really in that intuition that's within them?
One of the ways I think that's really effective at tuning up and connecting more with your intuition is really to take time to do a quiet meditation. People don't like this idea of meditation. I mean, a lot of people are into it, but a lot of people don't like it. But I don't think it should be something complicated. It's just if you sit down and close your eyes and are quiet, so you're closing off the external stimulus in your life, like close your eyes, don't have music on it, just be quiet so you can connect with the voice that's inside of you and listen to that. Or even if you are listening to music, you can still really focus internally on what you're thinking. And it just takes practice. You can start with 1 or 2 minutes, then go to 5 minutes. I try to connect every morning for 20 minutes. And then before I go to bed, to try to develop the connection with my intuition so I can hear what she is saying, because she has so many good things to say to me. Like here's your negative voice is one little part of you and your intuition is another part. So you have these people. But anyway, I really tried to listen in because she really gives me a lot of good input that I really benefit from. So the more I connect with my intuition, it helps me. And I would advise anybody who's like frustrated and overwhelmed, just taking that few minutes in the morning and you're like, even when you're lying in bed, just thinking about, breathing in and just trying to connect with your intuition, making it a conscious, intentional effort.
Is there any questions that you try to dwell on, or you just try to just be?
I try to be, but what happens is if you set out with an intention, like I've been working on this copy for a sales page I'm doing, and I've been really focusing a lot on that. And then I try to focus on what I'm right. Actually, I don't do that. I really just try to listen in, and then ideas for copy just come to me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's brilliant. Like it really comes up with some good ideas that are really addressing the needs that I want to come to and develop. And so by really listening in, I'm able to really get good feedback and input. Because like your intuition knows what you're working on. And then it just, like even Einstein, when he says like he never go to bed without a problem in your mind because you're working on this problem in your mind. And while you're sleeping, your subconscious is dealing with it because it's connecting with your subconscious. And when you want to foster that connection so that you can build up that relationship.
Yeah. Is there any type of environmental things that you set up for yourself to take this 20 minutes? Do you like go to a certain place, or are you in a certain space, or what helps you kind of just quiet down? Because I think seeing that this is a challenge for some people that have developed the skill and the muscle, it doesn't start that way, but they can cultivate this kind of tuning in and listening in to their intuition. But I think for some, just them imagining just sitting still for a minute, I can listen to some people now. I can't hear them, but I hear their thoughts, and I think what they're saying is like, man, but you just don't understand it. It is just so hard for me to quiet my space. Or I think about this time, I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but I brought a friend to a restorative yoga practice. Okay. And I was loving it. I'm like, this is great. I'm just holding the space and connecting. And my friend, after we left, she's like, that was torturous. And I'm like, why? I thought that was great. I was like just zoned out. It was amazing. I felt like released from all this tension. I'm walking from the session feeling like light on, like I'm walking on clouds. And she was just like, man, that was so hard for me. And we talked about it a little bit. And what she said was, it was really hard for her to turn, in her words, her brain off. It was hard for her to turn maybe that negative voice off. It was hard for her to separate from that. And I know for some people that can be a challenge. So for those that just have been like, Alicia, I've sat for a minute. What are the encouragement and the loving kindness or steps that you try to give them to just kind of learn to sit with that maybe discomfort or that tension? Is there anything that you give or tell people?
Yeah. The thing is, I've been meditating for many years. So for me, it's easy. And I know in the beginning, it was very hard. That's why I just started with 1 minute. But for some people, even to sit for the 1 minute is hard. And it does, you can like, how it is when you get in the shower and then all of a sudden you get so many ideas in your head because you're relaxed, you're enjoying the warm water, it's soothing on your body. And it's like closing down your conscious mind so that your subconscious mind can come up. So some people get these thoughts or connections in the shower, or going for a walk without, or a run without headphones in, so that your brain has time to get into the rhythm. When you're in something that's a rhythmic, like running, you are able to move from your conscious mind to the subconscious mind. And that's really what you're trying to get into. So you were relaxing so your subconscious mind could kind of open up for you. And she was like, oh my God, this is too stressful. So that there was no way that was going to happen. But there must be something else that she can do, whether it's like some of my clients, I use like a candlelight. They can sit and look at the candle to focus, or doing the walking meditation, or when they're running, or whatever it is that works for them.
Yeah. So it's maybe just starting with something that you feel like you can do that may be movement oriented, or like you said, even sensation oriented, like in the shower, and just trying to take some few minutes to really just disconnect from the world around you and connect to your inward self. And just trying to practice that. And it takes practice. So I'm sure with her, we didn't do it again. I didn't bring her back to another restorative yoga class. But I can imagine that if the more we did it, the more she exposed herself to that kind of setting that allowed her to move through that, then the more it would actually come to be something that could be enjoyable to her.
Right.
I guess what I'm hearing you say is just taking that time and starting somewhere and being intentional about that practice can really help you tune in.
Right. If she could commit to going like 10 times, and even though the first 3 times might really be, like nails on a blackboard or something for her, but once she gets over that hump, then she can get into the joyous part of it for her. It's moving beyond. It's just like when you're learning any sport. Like the beginning is really frustrating because your body doesn't know the movements and it's hard. But then after you've been doing it a while, it becomes second nature and you don't even think about it anymore. So it's just like that.
Yeah. Well, and it is so true. I think a lot of this, one of the things you said earlier was pushing past your comfort zone. And then when you do that, then your comfort zone is going to naturally expand. And then you're going to have to push the boundaries some more past that. And it is kind of interesting to me to think about, just as far as in my own journey and experience, where every time that I push a little bit past, then there's always something uncomfortable that I have to challenge myself to push through. And I almost have to do it intentionally to say, like, Christy, like today I had to make a phone call, Alicia, and I was like, okay, I really don't want to make this phone call because I know it's something that I don't know if I'll like the outcome of the phone call, but I need to just challenge myself to do it. So I had to remind myself, Christy, you're not going to like a second of this phone call, but you're going to do it because it's something you're trying to avoid. And if you keep on avoiding, it's not going to change. So you just need to tackle it.
Actually, you only need to get 4% out of your comfort zone to make a difference.
Okay, 4%. Well, now I know I just got to get 4%. That's a good way to think about it too, because, sometimes people feel like they need to take 100% leap out of their comfort zone.
Right.
And
right.
the reality is 4%.
Right.
Focus
So
on
you're just
4%.
inching the comfort zone out bit by bit. And it'll make a huge difference.
And that's a lot more doable than trying to change your way of being or doing in one kind of situation or instance. Well, how has kind of meditation and that own practice for you changed your life or your perspective or just your experience?
Meditation is great because it gets you from being in your head, like going, feeling this overwhelm, to really being grounded and centered so you can handle problems that come up. My attention span has increased. My patience has increased. Like, I started when my kids were really little, and, I would just snap and be kind of not like the storybook mom. I wasn't Mrs. Brady, but going through the meditation really helped me to become better at parent and listening and understanding their perspective. So I think meditation offers so many upsides, and it's so good for your brain health. And they talk about, the benefits for Alzheimer's, and there's so many good benefits. I don't understand why more people don't do it. But like you say, it is something different for people, and it's a different thought process and a different way of being.
Well, and I think it also tying into just, why it's important. I think you've even highlighted in some of the things that we've talked about. And I know that that's not the only thing that you suggest people do, but what I've heard just in our short conversation is not only does it help you kind of learn to trust yourself more because you're more in tune with yourself, you're more aware of what is like a negative voice that's trying to limit you versus a voice that's just trying to give you caution, or trying to give you a heads up, like, maybe you shouldn't go over there, or trust your intuition on this. It's not a negative voice trying to limit you. It's actually something that's trying to protect you. And I think those are two different things: limiting you or creating a barrier from something that you're trying to do. And then that voice that's really just a voice of, I'm trying to give you some help and direction so that you don't fall off into this,
Think of it as a guardian angel trying to nudge you along.
That's right. But I think, it's more of a connection of self with self is what I'm hearing. And the more connected you are with yourself, the more you're able to unleash or unlock parts of your brain or parts of your creativity or parts of your mind that actually can help you move forward through a challenging thing. Or just like you said, I'm just trying to write a sales page here. I'm getting stuck. I know I want to write this in a way that resonates with the people that I'm serving, but the words are just not coming up for me. Let me actually just not trying to strive on this and just be. And then miraculously, here comes all these different ideas. And you're like, oh, wow, okay.
Yeah. For me, that was really exciting.
Yeah, it's like unlocking your potential. What are some other strategies or ways or things that you just kind of help people as they are trying to learn how to challenge this negative voice, like step into their energy or step into their purpose?
One of the best things that I suggest, well, in my opinion, one of the best ways I encourage my clients is into harnessing the power of their energy. And so what I encourage them to do is to think of a time when they felt like on top of the world and really excited and really enthusiastic and were doing something that they really wanted to do. and the energy that they felt in their body and mind and spirit, that energy, and to learn to embody that energy every day so that every day you're going with that wonderful feeling inside your body. So then everything you approach from that perspective. So I have a time when I was speaking before a group of 250 women, and I was really enjoying speaking to them. And I love doing public speaking like that. And I just felt on top of the world. And afterwards, everyone came up to me and wanted to talk to me about what I was doing. And I just felt awesome. So now in the morning, I go back to that time and bring that energy into my body and really just feel it fill me up. And anytime I'm feeling not at my best, I can just reconnect with that energy and bring it in to really uplift my mood and energy. And that's something that, it's not going to cost you anything. It's easy to transport. You can harness that power anytime, but really harnessing the power of that positive energy that you had anytime you want is a fantastic tool to have and use.
Yeah, well, and I'm thinking, and as people are listening, I know even me, one of the previous episodes I recently did, I was talking about a time where I actually got energy zapped and needed to have a rest. But at the same time, too, there's times where you just need to recall. It's almost like a recall. Like I'm trying to recall this energy back into my present that I've experienced in my past to help me move through this thing that I need to do. So it might be a task, it might be a conversation like we're having. It might be I guess with some of the clients that you're working with, there might be a day where you're like, oh, I'm really tired, but I really need to connect with the person that's in front of me. So it sounds like you use visualization of a time where you really felt energized to bring that energy and that feeling back into your present moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Tony Robbins calls it a state change. You're trying to change,
Okay.
you're in one state and you want to be in another state. So remembering that past state that you want and just bringing that into your body.
Man, I love that. Well, and I can, and maybe if you're listening, maybe you can think of a time that you were really in a high energy state, that you felt really good. You felt really on top of the world. And sometimes that's hard for us to recall if we're in kind of a tougher, maybe season of life where that energy is not as apparent or as top of mind. But I guess just recalling that time where you felt really good. And I also am thinking, as we're talking about this, that's also a great way to not only just recall the energy, but also almost refocus where your passion sometimes lies. Not that you can always go back, but it also maybe gives some clues about what you want to move forward towards.
Yeah, exactly. I do that a lot with my clients. I have them develop their strength list by looking at where they have been successful in the past and telling stories about past things that they did that they were proud of, because then you can see hidden in that their successes and the things they really like to do that they often don't think about. So that helps to give them more tools to work with.
Yeah. Well, and how do you help people just realize that maybe they're not sure where they want to go next? Is that one of the strategies? Do you have any other strategies that you try to give them to help them get clarity about where they want to spend their time, energy, and focus as they move forward?
Yeah, definitely. The first thing that we work on is really getting grounded in their core values and reminding themselves of what those core values are. And some people think, oh, I have so many core values, but there's a difference between your aspirational values and your core values. So your core values are one that are reflected in you and they don't really change over the time. They're the things that you were the same in the past that you are going forward, that you're going to hold with you. Like for me, one of my core values is curiosity. Another is lifelong learning. And the third one is connection. So those three core values, they just resonate with who I am as a person. And a lot of people can't just rattle off their core values like that. But that's something that's really helpful for you. So anytime you're making a decision, you can think, well, does this align with my core values? Is that something that I really want to do? So that helps them think about what's going to be important for them to make sure that it's in alignment. And then the second part is really looking at the strengths, looking at what are the things that you did in the past and sharing that story with someone else. So then they can tease out what your strengths are. So it's not up to you, but it's out to someone else. Oh, you were really great on doing that podcast. I can see that you love sharing your knowledge, that you're excited to work with other people and help people, and seeing those different kind of strengths so that when you're trying to figure out what to do, you can see these are the things that really bring me joy. So I'm going to focus on that area. And another thing that's so helpful for people is really to focus on their future self instead of looking past to see, well, what did I like to do in the past? But through visualization, you can connect with your future self and figure out, oh, if that's the person I really want to be, what does it take to be that person? And then make your decisions from that future perspective. Matthew McConaughey, he talks about it. Someone asked him, who was his mentor? And he said, my mentor is me in 10 years. I connect with me in 10 years because that's, that person knows me and knows what's best for me. So why would I have someone from the outside? Like I can use myself as my own mentor. So that's another great tool that really helps people to figure out what they want to do by connecting really with their inner self.
Yeah. Well, and I love that too. It's like what is future me going to be looking like? And what is future me going to say that I need to learn or do or be or experience now to be able to get to that place? And it's I don't think we always sometimes we get so caught up in the doing, we forget to take time to carve out that intentional space to say like, yeah, what would future me actually want? What would future me say? What do I want the future version of me to say in this situation, and help almost guide me towards becoming future me.
And your future self should be your guide because that's, you're moving in that direction. So looking at your future self and how you want them to be, and then what are the decisions you're making today that's going to lead you on that path to get you to that destination.
And it's so hard to sometimes just take that space to think about it, but just thinking about it is going to really help guide you in your next steps. I can think of on the journey, and I can think about conversations I have sometimes, and people are really sometimes stuck. They find themselves stuck. I think we all have found ourselves stuck in their present circumstance. And it almost seems as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about this connecting to future you allows for that space to kind of visualize past your circumstance into your future, and hopefully that'll help you create a path through your present circumstance that might make you feel stuck. In that future you can guide you along that path.
Yes, exactly. That's really perfect.
Alicia, what do you find? What is future you? What is future you? What do you want? What does future Alicia look like? And what is she guiding you on at this point in your life?
Thank you. I really enjoy spending time with my future self because I'm really working with different women and helping them become the best that they can be and to live the life that they really want to. And working with women to focus on taking the time and the self care that they need to become the best that they can be. So my future self is really working with women to help them blossom to their full potential.
What do you think is the biggest struggle that holds women back from really moving to that full potential?
I think they don't really take the time they need for the self care. And I think women really need to focus on taking the time to do their self care and spending time with themselves so that they have a chance to listen to what they want to be and really take care of their own needs. We spend so much time putting other people's needs first, whether it's with our kids, with our family, with our parents, at work, all of the different things. We tend to take a back seat in our lives. And I think shifting that into moving into the front seat and driving what you want is going to make a big difference.
As you're saying this too, I thought about just earlier how you just reflected back some strengths and the importance of being around people that will hold you accountable to taking care of yourself. And it may be like a coach or a consultant or somebody, therapist in your life, well, whoever that is, or it might be a friend, but having that some person that can actually reflect that back is powerful, right? Just in the few seconds that you were doing that reflection of strengths, right? And just using it as an example, I was like, wow, that's real. It was making me think to myself, like how we sometimes will undermine our strengths, but we need that space. And sometimes if we have a trouble creating that space, and I do think that women are notoriously, have a hard time taking care of their own needs. I think people in general sometimes struggle with this, but I do think women do struggle with this a lot. Making sure to prioritize that, then it'll give you the space to get clear on really what it is that you need in that season, whether it be tuning into yourself, combating that negative voice, connecting with the future self, getting clear on our strengths or our values that will help us move the needle forward. All the things that I'm hearing you say, that can be the domino that just gets pushed that then helps you along the journey to figuring out where you want to blossom to next.
Yeah. And like you said, it's really wonderful to have a coach or a therapist, because when you're standing inside the jar, you can't read the label on the outside. So to have someone on the outside who's looking in, they can see what's going on and where you've got these roadblocks that you're hitting up against. So that's really helpful.
Yeah. And we all need it. Okay, guys, I'm just going to be honest. I feel like some days I'm like, yes, I'm so aware, self aware. And then I like get something and I'm like, no. Doesn't mean that I'm not self aware in some things, but having somebody, that safe space, and whoever it is that's in your life or that you get to become in your life can really be transformative in helping you see that label. Like you said, when you're on the inside of that jar, you can't see this, what it looks like on the outside. You're so trapped. Sometimes you can be trapped in your own world. So having that person that then helps you see, whether it be how to really find yourself or how to figure out where you want to go next, can really be life changing. So that might be a really good segue right now, Alicia, to tell people how, if they want to work with you or connect with you, who do you really love working with, and how can people connect with you?
I love working with women who are going through a transition in their life, particularly as they're approaching the empty nest phase. For women, we spend so much time. We do our education, we work, we get married, we have kids, we're raising our family. And then there's nothing. Like, there was no after plan for after we have kids. Like, it's such a funny time for women. Like, the kids get out of the car and they run off to school, and the mom goes home and there's an empty house. And it's like, now what do I do with myself? Like, their whole schedule is off. They don't have to get up to take the kid to school. They don't have to cook the meals, like the laundry, everything about it is going to be different. So for stay-at-home moms, going through this adjustment time is really major issue. And it's really I love to work with them to help them, appreciate what a huge transition it is for them in their lives, to celebrate with them the fact that they've been working on this project for 20 years and they've successfully completed it. Like, it's a cause for celebration. And then to really help them focus on the next steps that they want to work on. I think that's my favorite place where I like to be.
Well, awesome. Well, we will definitely link up Alicia's information, so that way you can find it if you want to find out more about her. I know she also has Kickin' newsletter where she writes different blogs and sends out information for you to be able to find your way, maybe through some of these transitions that you find yourself in, or even some of these maybe stuck places that you find yourself in, and how to gain a fresh perspective on how to move forward through that. So, Alicia, I do ask my guest a question that I always like to end with, but that is, if you were to go back to younger you at any point along the journey, you can pick your point along the journey that you want to go back. But if you were to go back to younger you and give yourself a piece of advice, a word of encouragement, a recommendation, what's one thing that you feel like if you could go back and tell yourself that you would?
I would definitely tell myself to take those French classes, sign up for freshman French and do that, and take that AP English class and do it. I was one of the smart girls. I just was browbeaten by my mother in a hard way.
Yeah. Well, and I think that brings up a good point, just to kind of tie a bow on this conversation. Sometimes there are voices that we let into our life because they are the most dominant voices at that stage in our life. And so sometimes it is not only just our own negative voice, but recognizing how some of the voices of others aren't always true, and they may not always be, and they might be limiting themselves that then just get projected onto us. And so how to take the things my dad used to tell me one time. He says, I hope you take the best and leave the rest.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's when it comes to other people's opinions or other people's feedback of us or their evaluation of us. Sometimes if we're not aware, those voices can still play on repeat in our head. And it's, how do we just acknowledge those and then say, you know what, that might have been, maybe it was a protection thing. Maybe it was whatever. I'm not here to whatever, but I don't want to have that voice there anymore. And I'm saying goodbye.
That's what my kids, one of the biggest pieces of advice that I tried to browbeat into my kids is that you become like the 5 people you hang around with. You may not want to, but it just happens through the mirroring neurons that we have. So be really careful to pick your friends and make sure when you see what they're doing, like, you're going to be like that. Is that what you want to be like? And really think about that.
Yeah. And we don't realize, but sometimes if we're not being intentional, those people that we start hanging out with, they really do creep into the way that we think and interact and view the world. And so I couldn't agree more. Be protective.
Yeah, it's those mirror neurons. You start finishing other people's sentences. I mean, they get in your head. You can't help it. It's the way we're built.
Yeah. So pick your 5 people wisely, folks. Pick your 5 people wisely.
Exactly.
Well,
exactly.
Alicia, I just want to appreciate and acknowledge you for, number one, just taking the time to be here today, but really, being able to say, hey, I want to help. I know I've found my way through this journey and I'm maybe still figuring it out, but I want to help empower women to really step into who they are and who they're meant to be in that maybe next phase of life or through that life transition. And I'll always love the guests that we have on here because they normally have had a story themselves, but they didn't let it stop there. They're like, how do I reach back to these other people that maybe have felt like I did at one point and help them rediscover not only their uniqueness, but learn how to listen to themselves and really find their way to fully being themselves and living fully along the journey.
Lovely. Yeah. You're such a fun conversationalist.
Listen, I love conversation and I'm like you. One of my values, even though I maybe have not always resonated or put it as a core value, but it really is curiosity. And one of the things that I've just loved by having guests like you, Alicia, is that, sometimes we don't realize, but everybody has a story. We all have something we can learn from each other. And sometimes we just need those people to speak into our lives, just kind of like you speak into other people's lives and help them identify those strengths to see the things that we can't. And so if you're used to listening to this show, I normally try to give you one big takeaway. And maybe that's what the takeaway is today is get yourself in a space, whether it be with a coach or a friend or a therapist or whoever, that can speak into your life and be able to see things that you may not be able to see and help you find ways through stuck places that you may not be able to navigate, because we all are social creatures. I always say we weren't supposed to be on an island. If we were supposed to be there, we would have been left there, but that's not how we got left. That's not how we entered this world. And so really taking the time to find somebody that can speak some life and truth into you, because that will really help you fully step into who you're meant to be. Until next time.
That's all for today on Inspiring Possible. If you found a little inspiration today, please go on over to iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen to leave us a comment and rate us. Also, make sure and link up with me at inspiringpossible.com to get the free Dream It, Write It, Do It workbook. And don't forget to follow us on social media and share this with anyone who needs to be inspired. Remember, if you can believe it, it's possible.